My mom texted, "You're out. Don't come back." I replied okay. And that changed everything. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. I was 19 when my mother, Bryn Hale, sent that message. There was no warning. No argument that night. Just 12 cold words that ended my childhood. I was sitting in my college parking lot when my phone buzzed. I remember reading the text again and again, thinking it had to be a mistake. I waited for another message. Maybe she would say she was angry. Maybe she would say she didn't mean it. Nothing came. My chest felt tight. My hands were shaking. I had lived in that house my whole life. Every memory I had was there. And in one moment, it was gone. I could have begged. I could have called her and cried. Part of me wanted to. But something inside me changed right then. I was tired of proving I deserved to stay. So I typed one word. Okay. I put my phone down and stared through the windshield. I didn't know where I would sleep that night. I didn't know how I would pay for food. But I knew one thing clearly. If she wanted me gone, I would leave with my head high. She thought that text would break me. She didn't realize it was the first step toward my freedom. Kate Hale was her pride. Star athlete. Always surrounded by friends. She bragged about him to neighbors, teachers, anyone who would listen. His trophies filled the living room shelves. His photos covered the walls. I stayed in the background. Straight A's. Academic grants. After classes, I rushed to my shift serving coffee and fries, then came home to scrub floors and wash dishes. I handled bills when she felt overwhelmed. I kept the peace. She liked to tell me, "You're tough, Kova. You don't need much." It sounded like praise, but it felt like distance. It meant she didn't have to show up for me. Cade could do no wrong. If he missed curfew, it was stress. If he failed a test, it was the teacher's fault. If he yelled, he was passionate. Then came the call from the police station. He had wrapped his pickup around a guardrail after drinking at a party. No one was badly hurt, but the damage was serious. She didn't ask why he was out that late. She didn't question the alcohol. She looked at me instead. "You should have stopped him," she said. "You're his sister." The argument burned through the house like gasoline. Words flew hard and fast. Accusations stacked on top of old resentments. By sunrise, her decision was clear. I packed what I could carry. The front door closed behind me, and the driveway felt colder than ever. At first, I believed the fight was about my brother's accident. That was the easy explanation. But the more I replayed everything in my head, the less it made sense. Her anger felt forced, like she had been waiting for a reason. This wasn't really about him. It was about finances. My grandfather, Arlo Vance, passed away the year before. He had always been quiet but observant. After the funeral, I remembered seeing Bryn tuck away a thick envelope with my name written across the front. She never mentioned it again. Whenever I asked about Grandpa's estate, she changed the subject. Weeks before I was told to leave, a law office had reached out to the house. I answered the phone that time. When I handed it to her, her face shifted. She walked into another room and closed the door. After that call, she became restless. Checking mail constantly. Snapping at small things. Watching me in a way that felt calculating. Then came the message telling me not to return. Later that same afternoon, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. It was that same legal office asking to schedule a meeting regarding documents connected to my grandfather's estate. The timing was too perfect. She had known something important was coming. Something tied to me. Something valuable. Suddenly, her decision felt less emotional and more strategic. It wasn't about discipline or disappointment. It was about control. And once I understood that, everything started to look different. The first evening away from the house felt unreal. By the second, reality settled in. By the third, exhaustion wrapped around me like a heavy coat. My old Corolla became my shelter. I folded the back seat down and used a thin jacket as a pillow. Streetlights flickered above the parking lot while I tried to rest. Morning started before sunrise. I slipped into the campus fitness center with a small bag, pretending everything was normal. Quick rinse. Clean shirt. Smile for classmates. No one knew where I was spending the night. Meals were cheap and small. Fries and water stretched longer than they should have. I counted every dollar carefully, making sure my gas tank stayed above empty. In the dark, when traffic quieted, I let myself feel the weight of it all. Tears came quietly so no one walking past would notice. I missed safety. I missed certainty. But I refused to miss someone who pushed me away. Deep down, something shifted. The fear that once controlled me started to fade. In its place grew determination. I stopped waiting for an apology. I stopped expecting rescue. She thought I would crawl back and ask to return. She believed I would admit defeat. Instead, I reached for the folded paper I had kept hidden in my wallet. The contact information written there suddenly felt important. With shaking fingers, I dialed the number connected to my grandfather's affairs. A calm voice answered. That conversation redirected everything. The meeting took place in a quiet office downtown. The attorney, Mr. Soren Lyle, greeted me with a firm handshake and a serious expression. He opened a folder and got straight to the point. Your grandfather created a trust for you when you were 13, he explained. My fingers tightened around the edge of the chair. I had never been told anything about this. Not once. He continued calmly, outlining the details. For years, the account had been managed by a guardian appointed to supervise it until I reached legal adulthood. That guardian had been Bryn. But there was a clause. Once I turned 19, full authority would automatically transfer to me. I swallowed hard. I had turned 19 just days earlier. He slid documents across the desk showing assets far greater than I expected. Real estate holdings. Long-term investments. Savings carefully protected over time. This wasn't small support money. It was stability. Then he pointed to a final condition written clearly in the agreement. To receive unrestricted access, I had to be living independently, free from parental control. Everything clicked into place. The sudden anger. The forced argument. The message pushing me away. She hadn't been reacting to chaos. She had been trying to prevent losing authority. If I stayed under her roof, she could influence decisions. She could guide transactions. She could maintain involvement. But once I stepped out on my own, her position ended. The cold words that once felt cruel now looked calculated. It was never about discipline. It was about power slipping from her hands. A week after my meeting with Mr. Lyle, she appeared outside the student center. Her car was idling by the curb, and when I walked past, she called my name in a shaky voice. Her eyes were wet, and her hands trembled as she reached for me. Please, Kova, don't do this, she pleaded. I just want what's best for everyone. She hugged me tightly, whispering the nickname she always used, baby, come back home. Her words sounded sweet, but I heard the truth beneath them. It wasn't about concern or love, it was about the control she was losing. She begged, promising that things would be different. That she would be fair. That she would respect my independence. I thought about every insult, every argument, every cold night I had spent alone in that car. I remembered the text that had cut through my world like a blade, "You're out. Don't come back." Her sudden softness didn't erase the past. I shook my head gently and stepped back. No, I said. She froze, confusion and fear crossing her face. Her panic was raw, almost desperate. She hadn't expected resistance. For the first time, she realized I wasn't a child she could manipulate. I walked past her, keeping my pace steady. My future was my own. The parking lot echoed with the click of my shoes, and I knew one thing clearly: I wouldn't let her words or tears pull me back. After I officially gained control, Mr. Lyle suggested a routine check of all past transactions. I agreed, curious but calm, not knowing what we would uncover. We started going through statements, line by line. At first, everything seemed ordinary: deposits, interest, small purchases. Then patterns emerged. There were frequent withdrawals labeled as tuition or school fees, but I never saw a cent. Other entries noted house repairs or maintenance, and I realized these payments had gone straight to Bryn's renovations. One entry stood out: a hefty sum listed as a vehicle expense. That had been the down payment for Cade's new truck, the one he had shown off to friends so proudly. The amounts weren't enormous individually, but added together, they were significant. It hit me slowly. She hadn't just been overseeing my inheritance. She had been using it as her personal account, redirecting money for her comfort and Cade's pleasures. Legally, some of it was defensible under her oversight rights at the time. Ethically, it was a betrayal. Every transaction reminded me how carefully she had concealed the truth. I realized that this had been happening for years, and no one else had questioned it. No teacher, no relative, no lawyer, just her quietly controlling everything. She had disguised greed as care, authority as love. For the first time, the depth of her deception became clear. I wasn't just angry. I was determined. Everything she had quietly taken could now be accounted for, corrected, and reclaimed. And I intended to make sure she could never manipulate or access it again. I set the meeting for mid-morning at Mr. Lyle's office. Neutral territory meant no familiar walls to lean on, no rooms where she felt authority. She arrived with her usual confidence, shoulders straight, smile forced. She expected compliance, an apology, perhaps tears. I motioned for her to sit and calmly opened the folder I had brought. Inside were every statement, every transaction, every entry showing how she had used the trust. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't let emotion leak into my tone. I simply slid the papers toward her, letting the evidence speak. Her eyes widened as she scanned the documents. The color drained from her face. That confident air crumbled slowly, piece by piece. "You told me not to come back," I said softly. "So I didn't." The words hung between us. No argument, no pleading. Just truth. Then I explained the new structure of the trust. Every clause, every provision that now ensured she had no authority. Every decision would be mine. Any communication would be formal, through legal channels only. She tried to speak, but her words faltered. The cracks in her composure were unmistakable. For the first time in my life, I saw her without the mask of control she had worn for so long. And in that silence, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I wasn't afraid of her anymore. The power had shifted. And I was finally in charge of my own life. After everything, I knew I needed a fresh start. I applied to a different university, one across town, far enough to create distance but close enough to manage my life independently. Using part of the trust, I found a small condo. It wasn't luxurious, but it was mine. Every corner, every wall, reflected my choices. I unpacked slowly, arranging my space exactly how I wanted, enjoying the quiet autonomy. Tuition was no longer a worry. I covered every semester myself, paying in full. No deadlines for repayment. No reminders from anyone. I could focus on classes, work, and building routines that fit me. Cade reached out once. His voice sounded nervous over the phone. He wasn't seeking reconciliation. He wanted financial help. I listened, but I said nothing more than, "I can't." Not from anger, but from the understanding that some lines shouldn't be crossed. Boundaries were part of reclaiming myself. Days turned into weeks, and gradually, I settled into my new rhythm. Grocery runs, study sessions, even small dinners alone felt empowering. For the first time, decisions were mine alone. I managed bills, meals, and responsibilities without interference. I felt steady for the first time, no constant tension, no silent judgment, no feeling like I had to prove my worth. I was safe, in control, and self-reliant. Every morning, waking up in my own space reminded me I had survived, adapted, and built a life on my own terms. And that feeling, quiet, strong, unshakable, was something no one could ever take from me again. Several months passed. Life had settled into a quiet, steady rhythm. School, work, and managing my condo left little room for old chaos. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Bryn. I didn't mean it. I froze. My thumb hovered over the screen, remembering the first text that had upended everything. The 12 words that had made me leave, the nights I spent alone, the car I slept in, the independence I fought for. Her words were small, timid, and late. She expected an answer, a reconciliation, a crack in my armor. But I didn't reply. I stared at the message for a long time. No fire rose in me. No tears formed. I had already said everything I needed to say. Okay. That one word had carried me through fear, confusion, and betrayal. It had set the course for my life, for my freedom, for my control. She had assumed that removing me from her life would keep her power intact. Instead, it revealed her true nature. Her panic. Her greed. Her manipulation. She thought she could break me. She didn't realize that every step she had taken against me only built my strength. Every act of control, every lie, every unfair accusation had pushed me toward clarity. Toward independence. Toward victory. The message sat there, unanswered, a reminder that her authority no longer existed. That I had taken charge. That I was untouchable in the life I had rebuilt. And in that quiet refusal to respond, I realized something. Her attempt to hurt me had failed completely. It had exposed her. And for me, that exposure had changed everything. Do you think I did the right thing by never replying to her, or should I have given Bryn another chance? I'm curious what you think. Comment below, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell for more stories.